because I want my steak to have that nice glazy restaurant takeout look, I'm going to add the cornstarch to here just to thicken up the sauce a little bit. I'm not first thing that we're going to do is to prep our steak. Now this is a little bit over 1.5 pounds of flank steak, you guys. You can use beef sirloin. You can purchase the steak that's already cut up at the supermarket. It's usually listed as steak for stir fry. And you can definitely use your choice of cut for this for sure. I'm using flank steak. And what I'm going to do right now is to cut this as thin as possible, which will help to cook this quicker. And also I'm going to be cutting it against the grain. So I'm going to cut this into little slices, and then I'm going to wash my meat. So we're looking for thin slices, like so. Again, I have my beef, like so. Put your knife, or turn your knife to an angle, and cut against the grain, and try to keep the slices thin, because that's going to help to cook the steak, or that's going to help the steak to cook faster. Alright, so I'm going to finish slicing my steak, and then I'm going to wash my steak using some cool water and lime juice, and then we will get to seasoning the steak. So this is how much steak I got from the piece of flank steak that I had. And this is how I sliced the steak. So now I'm going to wash this using some cool water and lime juice, and we'll get to seasoning the steak. I have already washed my steak, and I have also pat dry using just a piece of paper towel. I pat it dry for any excess water that may have been left in here. So now I'm gonna go in with 1/2 tablespoon of all-purpose seasoning, 1/2 tablespoon of garlic powder, about 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons paprika, about 3/4 tablespoon of the ginger, garlic, and pimento seasoning. I found this at my local farmer's market. You should be able to find it at any Caribbean store. And if you're not able to find this locally, I do have this listed on my storefront, you guys. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of this Dale's liquid steak seasoning. I found this at my local Kroger supermarket. You should be able to find this at any. I've seen it at Kroger, I've seen it at Publix, I've seen it at so many supermarkets. And I'm adding 2 tablespoons of this to my steak. Now you guys, be very careful with this liquid steak seasoning. It is very high in sodium. I have seen the low sodium one before and I've never tried it, but be very careful of this seasoning. It is very high in sodium, and so for that reason I will not be adding salt to my steak. I'm also adding 1 tablespoon of fresh blend. In this container I do have a total of 3 tablespoons, and so to the steak I'm only adding 1 tablespoon. Now lastly, I'm going to drizzle about 1/2 tablespoon of browning onto here. Now if this is your first time working with browning, I will advise you to pour small amounts, such as about 1 teaspoon at a time, until it's at the desired color that you like it. You definitely don't want to add too much browning because then your meat will look black. Alright, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and combine everything in here properly. Now you can allow this to marinate for anywhere between 30 minutes to 4 hours, or you can definitely allow it to marinate overnight. Your preference. The longer you allow this to sit in the seasonings, the more intense and better the flavors will be. So depending on how much time you have, you can allow this to marinate for a short time. You can season it and add it to the pot right away, or you can allow it to marinate for a longer time. Your choice. Alright, so I'm just going to add just a little bit more brown into here. Nothing crazy, maybe about 1/4 tablespoon, because it looks a little bit too light for my liking. This is my personal choice, you guys. You don't have to add this much browning in there. It's definitely up to you. Okay, so this is at a color that I personally like. So this is how the steak looks after seasoning it. And for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and start cooking my steak right away. But as I did mention, 30 minutes to overnight. Allow it to marinate. It's up to you. I'm using a wok for this, and I do have this over a high heat. I'm also adding enough oil to coat the pot. I'm using extra virgin olive oil, but use any oil of your choice. So now I'm just going to allow this oil to heat up, and then I'm going to add the steak in here to start cooking. Now that my oil is hot, I'm going to add the entire amount of steak in here to cook. This is plain steak, so this may cook a little quicker, but depending on the cut of steak that you use, you definitely want to ensure the steak cooks until it becomes tender. Now I'm going to cover this for about 10 minutes or so and allow the steak to cook until it's tender. Let's prepare our sauce while the steak cooks. So, to this bowl, I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. I'm also going in with 1 tablespoon of the Mr. Yoshida's sauce. Now, if you've never had this sauce before, it's really just a sweet and savory soy sauce. So if you don't have this on hand, don't fret, just use soy sauce and some sugar. And I also found the Mr. Yoshida's sauce at my local supermarket. But I've definitely seen it at Publix before. 1 tablespoon ketchup. If you don't like ketchup, leave it out. And about 2 teaspoons of the dark soy sauce. Now I'm going to combine this and then set it aside. My steak has been cooking for about 15 minutes. And since this is flank steak, it doesn't take very long to cook. So at this point in time, I'm lowering my heat to low for the purpose of this video. Do you see how much liquid is still in the pot? If you want more liquid than this, you guys, you can definitely go in with about half a cup to a cup of hot water. Or you can add some beef broth. I would recommend hot water simply because if you add cold water to the pot, it's going to stop the cooking process of the beef, and you definitely don't want that. Alright, so now I'm going to add a tablespoon and a half more fresh blend to here. And if you're new here, fresh blend is similar to green seasoning, Epis, or sofrito. Next, I'm gonna go in with my multicolored peppers. This is a half of a small green sweet pepper, half of a small red pepper, and the yellow pepper. Next, I'm going to add, this is 1 small onion and 2 cloves of garlic. And lastly, we're now going to go in with the sauce that we made. So now I'm going to give this a stir, and do you guys see how beautiful and delicious that looks already? So I'm just giving it a stir just to combine everything in here. Now I'm just going to add a little water to the container that I had the sauce in just to get that excess out and add it to the pot. And I'm going to be using warm water. Now I'm going to raise back up my heat, and I'm going to allow this to cook for about 5 minutes or so. Alright you guys, so I'm using the same bowl that I used to make the sauce earlier, but I did not show this in my ingredients. But this is about 1 teaspoon of cornstarch, and I added small amounts of water to here until it turned into a slurry. So, because I want my steak to have that nice, glazy, restaurant, takeout look, I'm going to add the cornstarch to here just to thicken up the sauce a little bit. I'm not a big fan of cornstarch, you guys, because I do believe that it takes away from the flavor of your food. So whenever I do use cornstarch, I try not to use too much. So I'm just going to separate the meat from the sauce a little bit. And while I'm adding this, I'm going to stir just to prevent lumps from forming in here. Now I'm going to cut my heat off, and just like that, our pepper steak is now ready. Do you guys see how beautiful that looks? Now, because this is flank steak, it doesn't take very long to cook, but as I advised you guys earlier, depending on the cut of steak that you use, it may take a little bit longer to cook. Alright you guys, and that is a wrap. Quick and easy pepper steak. This is perfect for a weeknight meal or simply for a night that you just don't feel like doing too much in the kitchen. It's quick, easy, and super tasty. Now, I used flank steak for this, as I mentioned earlier, but if you do have Any other type of steak or beef, or if you have a preferred cut, go ahead and use that. But I would highly advise that if you're able to use flank steak, to go ahead and do so, because it cooked super quickly. Alright, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're new here, and share this video with a family or a friend if you enjoyed this tutorial. I really do hope that you enjoy this recipe. If you try it, share it with your family and friends. Try it out. And of course, I live for feedbacks, you guys. Let me know if you try it. And of course, I would not be able to end this tutorial by saying you don't have to use any one recipe to a T. Switch things up if you must, and do things your own way for sure. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys in the next tutorial.